Okay, let me see if they're live now. Yes. Ha, we figured it out. Wait, I something.
We figured it out.
I was like, I swear, guys, we're gonna get it. Okay, this is MHB. If you don't follow them, go follow. He's the best, and he does live streams of all different kinds of stuff all the time. So
Yeah, I was actually just streaming Chapel Roan. I was restreaming the Coachella stream of Chapel Roan because I've become obsessed with Chapel Roan in the last like week. So
see, there you go. So follow him. He has this whole setup, and during the Eras tour too. So, okay, let us know your thoughts.
yeah, so like
Wait, I have to go to the bathroom really, really fast. Listen to him. I'll be right back in like 2 seconds. Okay.
So I don't know if you guys have seen the tweet that Taylor posted. I guess it was like at 12:02 a.m. Eastern, right after the initial album came out, where she says, the Tortured Poets Department, an anthology of new works that reflect events, opinions, and sentiments from a fleeting and fatalistic moment in time, one that was both sensational and sorrowful in equal measure. And then this is the part that I think is important. This period of the author's life is now over, the chapter closed and boarded up. There is nothing to avenge, no scores to settle once wounds have healed. And upon further reflection, a good number of them turned out to be self-inflicted. And then, okay, I said before, but this is the really, really important part, this last part. This writer is of the firm belief that our tears become holy in the form of ink on a page. Once we have spoken our saddest story, we can be free of it, and then all that's left behind is the tortured poetry. Did you? I don't know if you heard. You've probably read the tweet, that Taylor's tweet from where she talks about the tears becoming holy.
Yes.
Because it's the last part that I was just reading, that this writer is of the firm belief that our tears become holy in the form of ink on a page. Once we have spoken our saddest story, we can be free of it, and then all that's left behind is the tortured poetry. That part of the statement, it isn't. So earlier in the statement, she's talking about this specific album, this period of the author's life is now over, right? But that last part is more general. It is this author's or this writer's firm belief that basically she's saying, once you write the song down, then you've already moved on. You're free of it once you've written it down. Mm-hmm. And where I am so fascinated by that is it ties into a lot of things that I was talking about in my multiverse series of videos, which if you guys, if you go to my profile page, it's one of my like first playlists is my TS multiverse videos. But basically like one of the things, for instance, during the Eras tour, she's been giving this speech. I think it's one of the few things that she has said at every single show during the Lover speech, where she talks about how, these songs may have been about something in my life, but after tonight, I want you to think about the memories that we made together instead of thinking about Jake Gyllenhaal and John Mayer, and think about the memories that we made together, right? She's been pushing that narrative, that shift in the narrative in multiple different ways. And this tweet is the most explicit yet. I think that what she's doing is, like, up until now, she's played this double game throughout her career where she has written these songs that are portrayed as being autobiographical, or at least like substantially autobiographical, right? And she feeds hints to the, she feeds us all this, like little hints and little confirmations and stuff, while at the same time being like, but I don't want you to paternity test my albums or my songs, and also like, sources close to her say this and that about Gaylor, all these things, right? And it's like she's trying to have it both ways, and she's been doing that for a long time,
very effectively, honestly, which is surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I think about that whenever I listen to Mastermind. To me, that's what Mastermind is about in a lot of ways. But I got the sense that she has increasingly been chafing against the long-term consequences of that. And I think this ties in with, like, I think this is, in the past when I've talked about this, I've conceived about it as conceived of it as mostly being about closeting. And I do think that that is for sure can be part of it, but I think it might be even bigger than that.
Yes. The more you look into it, I feel like, because it's easy to see like that's the only thing. Yeah, I think it's so much bigger. It's the whole like the whole thing, the narrative, the the persona.
Right, because what I talked about, my sort of basic premise in the Taylor Swift multiverse series, was that like one of the reasons why we as fans sometimes get kind of mixed up and like getting each other's faces about things in certain ways or whatever. I mean, obviously there are certain people who get in Taylor's faces because of homophobia, but like there's also conflicts that happen because like people on whatever part of the fan base really sort of identify with a specific, what I think is a character or series of characters who are named Taylor Swift. And I think she has always written songs about characters named Taylor Swift, but we're not seeing the full person or a fully authentic version of her. What we're seeing, and like those, what has happened to her as her career has gone on is that like she's created all these old Taylors that have sort of outlived their relevance to her life to the extent that they ever were based on her. Because it's like, because one of the things about this is we all as people like grow and change, and hopefully, right, we grow and change as we get old. Taylor Swift has been making music since she's 16 and she's 34 now. She's more than doubled in age, right? Like obviously she's grown and changed a lot in that time. And not only has her current, this is I think the critical point, not only has her current day self changed, but like we also change our own internal narratives about our past selves. Like we all do this. Like the way that you think now about yourself when you were 18 is different than the way that you thought when you were 23 about when you were 18, right? But Taylor Swift doesn't have the freedom to do that because she's created these versions of herself that are like stuck in time. And I think that she's gotten increasingly frustrated by that. And I think that she's been sort of trying different ways to like, yeah, that's, oh, is that the same tweet that I was reading or a different one?
Yeah, they were asking what tweet. It's the pinned one on her Twitter where she released the album.
She posted, yeah, it was like at 12:02 a.m. Eastern when she posted it. And so like, I think that when she came out with Folklore and Evermore, and I should acknowledge, I didn't become a Swiftie really until read Taylor's version, so I wasn't here for Folklore and Evermore. You know, I'm looking back on it retrospectively. But when she came out with those and was talking about, you know, it being fictional and she's writing stories about characters, I'm like, well, I think you've always been writing stories about characters. It's just that she decided to place them a little bit more of a remove, create a little bit more distance by saying like this character is named James instead of naming the character Taylor Swift. But it's still a character. It always has been a character, and I think that what she's trying to do without scolding the fans, because she doesn't want to scold the fans and she doesn't want to admit, like fully flat out admit, like in prose or in interviews, right, how much she's been lying. And by lying, I don't mean like the closet. I'm not talking about that. I mean like, I think that a lot of her narratives about muses, male and female, are partially are more fictional than we realize. Like
100%.
when
and not lying maliciously. I think a lot of people when we say that are like, "Oh my God, you hate her. You think she's a liar." Like not like that to protect herself.
It's actually weird. It would actually be weird if it wasn't true. The thing that's unusual about Taylor Swift, but part of what got me thinking about this actually is becoming a Brandi Carlile fan and listening to Brandi Carlile's music, because she also has a lot of very deep introspective songs, and like, you know, but for the most part, you don't know what they're about or who they're about, because if she's not, unlike Taylor Swift, that's not like it's not a cottage industry of trying to guess who the muse of this Brandi Carlile song from The Firewatcher's Daughter is or whatever, you know? And so you just listen to the song, and what I've, you know, come to think about as I listen to it is, you know, a lot of these stories that she's telling are a little bit incompatible with each other, where like, these probably aren't all literally based on like her own life, right? Because that just makes sense that they wouldn't all be like if you're a creative person, you're writing stories, right? And like it might be a story that you came up with based on a feeling that you had. This is what she said about Folklore and Evermore, right? I think that's been true of all of her albums. Like for Right Where You Left Me is a Kaler song, right? But like is it supposed to be a Kaler song, right? So let's just presume for the sake of argument that it is, but like, does that mean that she and Karlie Kloss were literally sitting in a restaurant, blah, blah, right? Like, and so there's varying degrees of it, but I feel like a lot of she has been feeding on both sides, on all sides of the fan base, these different narratives. But I think that, and this is what I tweeted at you earlier, like a lot of the things that we take as confirmation of some fact, like, she's like, and I don't think guilty because I don't think it's a bad thing, but I did this. Of like, she sang those songs on Karlie's birthday. That confirms, Kaler confirmed, right? And I'm like, yes, but also, is she confirming a fact or is she confirming lore? Like she's
is she confirming a narrative or just feeding into it? And also, what I think is really interesting about like the 8-3 and stuff is we're just assuming 8-3 means Kaler.
Right.
What if like, and that's what I feel like about all of the lore, really, of all of the muses. If, like, 143 with Dinah, what if that represents something completely different to her? Right. And so this whole house of cards is built on this one thing that could be like, but she plays into it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like, I think that where the lore thing helps parse that is that the counter argument to that people always make, like, is like, well, but she knows, like she knows that August 3rd is a national holiday for Gaylors. So like, regardless of whatever she thinks about that day, she knows what we think about it because she's online and right. And I think that's very true. But that's where I think it's important to like see it as she's not necessarily confirming a fact. She is saying this piece of lore is canon. Like if you think about it in those terms, like the way that you would in a freaking like Game of Thrones or a video game or what, you know what I mean? Like it's like
she mentioned GTA 5 in one of her songs.
Did she mention GTA 5 in one of her songs?
I saw that she mentioned Call of Duty.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like she's confirming things but like we also see her do this where like with those lists, with those playlists, right? Where there's this fan theory about like, these are the different stages of grief. So she just like made that true. That was like a fan invented thing. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not that it's like fully invented, but like another example on the straightler side would be like the thing about blue dress on a boat, right? That's confirmed XYZ about Harry Styles. Well, it's confirming lore. It's just confirming, it's making that lore canon for that part of the fan base. Mm-hmm. But like,
and she does it with all different parts of the fan base. Yeah. That's what's so fascinating. And I love what you're saying about confirming fact versus confirming lore, because that's perfect way to say it.
Yeah, because it's like different sides of the fan base have different sets of canon, right? Like there's Gaylor canon and there's Straightler canon, and like she has confirmed, and that's one of the reasons why like people again, I'm not removing homophobia from the reasons why, because that is one of the big reasons why. But even among people, I've had a lot of conversations with like people who think Gaylors are wrong, but like will engage in good faith and are like actually really interested in talking about it. As a straight person, it's easier for me to have those conversations, and so I sort of try to take that on sometimes. Mm-hmm. And like what I think part of what's going on there is we feel like she's confirmed our lore so many goddamn times. How could we possibly be wrong? But like they also feel that way because she's confirmed their lore so many goddamn times too, right?
That's so true.
But anyway, like all of that is to say that like I think that what this tweet, along with the other things she's been saying along the same lines, are telling us is that she wants to move past this sort of intensely tight tie-in between her life and her like muses and her just whatever's going on in her life, whatever inspired the song, and like the fans being so attached to that when they hear the song and that being how they associate the song. Because I think that it's that idea has sort of artistically run its course for her. Like
And it's
Yeah,
gone so far beyond where people can't apply it to their own lives, and
Right.
you can't do any literary analysis, nothing, because it's like, no, this is
Right.
about this thing.
Right,
You
right.
can't see any of the metaphors or the
Right.
anything else to it.
And so it's like, and I think that if you think about the implications of that, this writer is of a firm belief that our tears become holy. Once we have spoken our status story, we can be free of it. And then all that's left behind is tortured poetry. Well, by the time it's ink on a page, but like by the time the fans have it, it's ink on a page. So what she's saying is, like, henceforth, like, it is my firm belief that by the time you guys hear the song, it doesn't fucking matter what it's about, because that's over.
Years.
I'm free of it.
Yeah.
Right. So like I think it's deeper than just don't harass Joe. Like it's that too, but I think it's deeper than that. I think it's also, it's like you said in your tweet, something about like, it's like chaos theory, and it's like that where she's poking holes in all the narratives, right? Like it's like she's sort of she doesn't want to admit, like, hey guys, the events of All Too Well 10-minute version didn't happen exactly that way. A lot of that was
a literal keychain on the ground.
yeah. It's like a lot of that stuff was just stuff that I thought. It was just feelings that I had that I artistically converted into a fucking song, because that's what you do when you're an artist. But like someone back in her early part of her career told her that the best way to, like, you know, or she thought herself, but I'm guessing it was probably her handlers, because early on in her career, you know, she didn't have as much autonomy. Sure. And they said to her, like, hey, what you need to do is make this all about your fucking boyfriends, because then everyone will relate to it. And so she did that, and she trapped herself in that, and she doesn't want to now go back and be like, hey guys, like, a lot of that was made up. Like, yeah, I had these relationships, but like, I made up stories about those relationships. The stories aren't all real. And like, you know, like all these songs are supposed to be about Maddie Healy. Like, I'm like, okay, so in the 2 weeks you were with Maddie Healy, you had a lot of really interesting thoughts, and you wrote some songs about those thoughts. I can buy that. I can't buy that, like, all these many things happened, or, you know, but it's like, the author, Emily St. John Mandel, who's like my favorite author, she wrote the Station 11, which is, you know, made an HBO show. She's fucking fantastic. All of her books are great. But she has this concept that she talks about in The Glass Hotel of the counter life, where she talks about her characters, you know, sort of thinking about the alternate lives that they could have led after, you know, if various things had gone differently, and they will sometimes sort of basically daydream into like a counter life. And she writes this in a really, really compelling way, where like you're sort of swept off the page into this like fictional narrative, and then suddenly you're back in the present, and it's like really well done. But that idea of the counter life, one of the things that is very clear from her writing is this idea that like the counter life is not a deception. It's not something like when you're stopping and you're sort of experiencing feelings about an alternate reality that you've dreamed up in your head. Those feelings can be very real. You know, even if the experience didn't literally happen. I think we all can think of examples of this in our own lives, right? Where there's things that you've imagined so many times that you feel like you've experienced them, right? I think a lot of her songs are probably based on her counter lives rather than her actual life, to varying degrees. But like, she doesn't want to admit that, and so, but she also doesn't want to keep living in this Truman Show situation where she is both Truman and the director of the show.
Oh,
and
I love that.
You know, she wants to like move on from that artistically and personally, and so she's trying to like nudge us towards that. I don't think that the straight side of the fan base is going to get it. I'm not even sure if the Gaylors are going to get it, because we're pretty devoted to our narratives too. And like, you know, I think she is queer. Like, I think that she wouldn't be doing all this queer flagging if she wasn't queer. But like, I'm not confident in any of the specific narratives within that any more than I'm
think
confident
it
of.
shapes every single visual and lyric and everything that, like, I think her story is so much bigger. That's like a part of it, you know,
Right. And so it's like, but I think it's going to be, you know, that's also why, and I heard you saying before I came on the live, I heard you talking about like you know, the end of eras, and that's something that I've been talking about for a long time too. That was like in part of my multiverse thing, was like this idea that she I think, I don't think she's referred to this as the tortured poets era. I don't think there's been anything from her mouth that has said that. I could be wrong.
I don't think so either.
But I don't think so. And I don't think there will be. And I don't think she's going to add a set to the Eras Tour. I'm like on an island about this. It seems like everyone has adopted the consensus that she's going to add a Tortured Poets set to the Eras Tour.
I don't see how she will. I just don't see it.
I think that there's going to be, she might add a dedicated spot before surprise songs for one Tortured Poets song that she sings at every show as an acoustic song. But I don't think there's going to be a set because it's not an era. So there can't be a set at the Eras Tour. I don't think it's an era because the whole idea of eras is so tied in with all of the old Taylors. And it's like every new album, she has to reinvent herself and come up with a new aesthetic and a new persona and and it's like she doesn't want to keep doing that, which is why, frankly, take Midnights and put it over here because it's sort of its own thing. Midnights was part of it was a retrospective concept album. Part of it was a surprise 3 a.m. release that was just kind of whatever she had lying around. And commercially, its purpose was to set up the Eras Tour, right? Like artistically, it was retrospective. Commercially, it was setting up the Eras Tour. So it's kind of its own thing. If you ignore Midnights, her last 3 albums, Folklore, Evermore, and Tortured Poets, all kind of have the same aesthetic. They're not really distinct eras. Like not as distinct as what came before them anyway. Like Folklore and Evermore a little bit different, Tortured Poets a little bit different, but like not as different as Red and Speak Now were, or that Red in 1989 were. Like,
yeah, for sure.
And so like I think that's intentional. I think that she is trying to like move into a more mature phase of her artistic career where and I also think this is related to why she did the double album, because I think she's at the point where she's like, if I have music that I'm ready to release, I just want to fucking release it, just like she did with You're Losing Me. She's like, I'm ready to release this song. I'm going to release it now. And then we'll figure out where it goes on in the albums and the eras, but I'm just going to release it. She had 2 albums worth of songs ready to release. So instead of holding some of them back for a future vault track, blah, she just released it. Because I feel like she just wants to like be about the art. And it's fine. I don't mean to be naive when I say that. Obviously, she's also about the capitalism. Like, she's for sure about the capitalism too. But
she's gonna make money and be successful either way.
Exactly. And I think that, like, from an artistic perspective, she doesn't want the art stuff to be quite so tied in with the like aesthetics and it's like let the money people deal. Like, yeah, of course they're going to sell merch for the different albums and people can call them eras if they want, but like that, she's not pushing that piece of the narrative anymore because I think she's done with it. And I think that's why
didn't do merch until the last minute. Like it wasn't a whole.
Yeah. And I think that was intentional. Yeah. And it was like, because for the longest time, the only thing until the night before, the only things you could buy were the music, right? It was like different variations and what variants of the music, but that was the only thing you could buy. Finally, at the last second, they released the merch, right? But it's like, I think that she is, I think that she's like ready to move to that different stage, and the reason why the Eras Tour, like she made it very clear in the Time Magazine interview that she's going to keep making music. So for anyone who's like, oh, the Eras Tour is a wrap up of her career, or, oh, she's going to settle down with Travis and have babies and be done. Like, whatever. Like, no, she's made it very clear that's not the case. So then why does the Eras Tour feel so like valedictory? Like, why does it feel like we're wrapping something up? It's because we are wrapping up the Eras era, the meta era of eras. When she posted that Instagram about I'm in my Eras era, I think that the Eras era isn't just the tour, it's the whole thing.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all of it. It's her entire career from age 16 to 33 or whatever. And like, or maybe like, I think actually that when we look back on it, it might be like through Lover. And that like, because like, and also, obviously for those people who like believe in the failed coming out thing, like that's a relevant piece of it. Right. But regardless of whether that's true or not, like it feels like you had, Lover and the thing with the Masters and the pandemic and maybe a full coming out, a whole bunch of things happened, right? And there was a break.
And her mom got diagnosed.
Right.
Like there were so many things.
Yeah. And so then it's like she shifts gears, but it's been a very, very slow rollout of the gear shift, and it's very hard to sort of perceive it for what it is, I think, because we're in the middle of the Eras tour still. And also, like, she's become the most famous person in the world since Michael Jackson. And so it's like, the idea of being like Taylor Swift is ready to be done with the phase of her career where everyone is obsessing over her every move feels like a very strange thing to say right now. But it's because, like, she is at an intersection between past and present, and we're still in the part that's very backward looking with the Eras tour. So like, until that's over, this is still going to feel weird, but like, I think that what we're transitioning to,
we're setting up some future
where it's going to look like Folklore, Evermore, and Tortured Poets were like the beginning of the next thing. It won't always be stylistically the same. Like, she's going to keep, like, because it wasn't like the first half of this album didn't sound anything like Folklore, Evermore. The second half kind of did, but so she'll keep, you know, being vibrant, and I hope we get a Taylor Swift rock album at some point.
Oh.
My daughter wants a Taylor Swift soft jazz album at some point.
Hey, don't talk to me.
But like, and that'd be great. But like, I think that what's gonna keep being the case is that it's not gonna be so intensely tied in with eras and aesthetics and muses and all that shit. Like, she's trying to leave that behind.
Okay, so a few thoughts. In her interview that she did.
I know I talk.
No. I love everything you said. Like, I was literally just like making mental notes in my head. Okay. In her interview with Paul McCartney, she talked about how when she figured out that she could use like characters and stuff in Folklore, that really opened everything up for her. And when you see her talk about that, it is very easy to see how it would be impossible for her to go back to that intense scrutiny. And she says in that interview how you know, that she's creating, like, you know, a monster of her own, like, she is creating this thing that like puts this magnifying glass on her like life and her personal life that she doesn't like, but she's like, and so she figured out a way not to do that. And so I think you're like exactly right that is not sustainable, and she's moved past that. But also with you saying about her writing about characters is like, that's such a good way to say it, because I've been like thinking that and saying it, but not in that way. Because when you think back to some of her earliest songs, she wrote when she's 12, 14. She was not experiencing that kind of love and heartbreak. And she even said like that she had to write stories about like people around her, and like, I mean, she hadn't had that kind of long, tumultuous relationship and then devastating heartbreak when she was 14. So from the very beginning, she was having to gather inspiration from other places and maybe dramatize situations. Like, she wrote Hey Stephen about a guy that she literally just saw once, you know, you know, and wrote a whole song about it. Even Enchanted, like, oh, I met you once, it became this whole song and this whole thing, and it's got its own beautiful set in the Eras tour. Like, not everything can be written about, like, you know, this whole huge love story about even you know, Harry Styles, John Mayer. These are people that she publicly dated for like a couple months, and we've attributed like multiple albums and inspiration to them. Like, that can't be reality. Like, that just can't be. And to think that she's only ever written songs about like 5 different people, you know, like, and I also think, like, we were talking about like breaking down narratives, and you know, if we look at this whole like Eras tour, she's been doing that, though, with the way that Jack released that You're Losing Me actual, when it was written, through that whole, you know, timeline narrative into question. And even the lawsuit that like resurfaced, those emails about her dad, that threw into question all of these things from earlier in her career. Like, oh, this whole like narrative that we've known about her, that's all different, not in a bad, just very different. All of these different things that don't seem connected, but that have come out in the last couple of years. Even her like friendship with Kaylee Taylor, people were like, where did this chick come from? Like, she's like giving her a ring and all this stuff. They've been friends for years. It's just not like it's just not something that was, you know, not a focus. And so it just seems like all these little things, and her like even doing collaborations with like Florence and Post, and it's like, oh, I didn't even know she was friends with these people. or
Right.
even the photos from the Grammys party where she was with like Fletcher and all these, and we were like, oh my God, we didn't know that she like ran with all this crowd, but they look so familiar. It's like every single thing has been very purposeful. Even the Travis thing,
Right.
like her coming out in the Time thing and being like, oh, that wasn't our first date or whatever.
Right.
It's like everything she's doing is like, it's like a, you know, she's saying one thing, she's saying something else. Like she's showing us like, you don't know, like none of this like stuff that we think is like established is reality. It's all just, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a house of cards.
Right.
Again, not in a deceptive bad way, just like this is PR, this is showbiz, this is art. Like I can literally make an entire, like for a while the entire Speak Now set on Eras was Enchanted. She can build an entire Eras set on a 5-minute interaction with someone. Like that's what she's saying. Like look at what I can do, and look at what, you know, like I can build this whole thing and then I can take it back down. And again, like with the whole everybody thinking that album was going to be about Joe and then it being, you know, about Maddie or whatever, like, with people being like, you know, it just makes everybody have to think more about what they think they can take for granted and what they think, like the second they get an album, like, oh, this is about Carly, Diana, Harry, Joe, blah blah, you know, like whatever. And it's like, actually maybe it's about this person you just fucking didn't even put into the equation, you know what I mean? And so I just feel like this whole thing is building it up to break it down, basically, you know? And to think that if her relationship with Maddie was as intense as it appears, for her to be with Travis so soon after and be like so in love and so public, like what does that mean? Like it's, you know, if you're thinking like critically about it, it's all like, what is even real? What in this lore is even real? And maybe the point is like nothing, like, you know, like nothing. And not other artists, like you said, don't. And it's the thing is like, it is one of the reasons that she's so successful, like people being able to break down and like connect and like people love that shit. But other artists don't have
this
to
notion of authenticity, like this veneer of authenticity that she created throughout her career by tying it to her life experiences, and that has been like extremely successful. Like if that was the advice that somebody gave her back in the Fearless era or whatever, it was good advice commercially. Like it has made her, I mean, look what she is now, right? Look what we made her do. But at what cost? But at what cost? Yeah. You know, and the difficulty of extricating from it. Like talking about something you said reminded me just in terms of like the way that songs come about, like the 5-minute interaction can lead to whatever. Like one piece of Brandi Carlile info that I got from her memoir, her autobiography, that kind of got.
Wait, you
was like,
oh, there you go.
She. Sorry, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. You're back. Oh wait, no, now you're mute. What's happening? Okay, he's fixing that, I think. But yes, I agree. It's too much now. Hopefully he's fixing that. But I do think it's very much like building up this public, you know, this whole thing just to like tear it all down and make everybody realize like we don't know anything. We only know what she chooses to show us. And so I think that's such an important thing to know about any famous person is like we only know what they choose to show us. And just like influencers, you know, like we see the part of their life that they show us. So are you back? Talk. Let me see.
I'm back. Sorry, that was my,
okay.
my
continue with what you're saying. I was just
you know, I think I feel like we might be lagged from one another. I don't know. I'll see when you because I feel like you're like 10 seconds behind me or something. Say something now.
Hello.
Okay. I guess
Okay,
we're.
okay.
I think we maybe were for a second, but we're good now. Okay. So, yeah, it was my daughter calling to ask if she could use or they could use our credit card for something. So, what was I saying? But like, so Brandi Carlile talks about how she has a song "Raise Hell," which, P.S. If anybody who isn't familiar with Brandi Carlile, she's amazing. But like this song in particular, listen to. Just go on Spotify and search up "Raise Hell" by Brandi Carlile. It's such a fun song.
He's a
like
Brandi Carlile stan along with Taylor stan, so that's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
you'll get the connections between the two.
yeah. That's my dual hyperfixations.
Yeah.
But like "Raise Hell" is like a kick-ass song. It like goes so hard, and it's like it talks about like the devil, and like it has all this like crazy imagery in it. But in her autobiography, she talks about the fact that what inspired that song was she was pissed off at this like other musician that she was collaborating with who was like being a jerk, and so like she wrote this entire song based on the fact that she was just pissed off at some guy, and like the song has nothing to do with. You would never guess that, right? Like it sounds like she's writing about some I don't even know what. Like it's
grudge, like whatever, yeah.
Symbolic language, but it's like it sounds like something very very like dark and grand and like and it's like she was just mad at some guy one day, and so she wrote a incredibly powerful song just on that feeling. That's what people who are like talented, artistic, creative people can do. Is you can take, that like maybe she like, we're talking about like female muses, like maybe some of her songs that we say are about, oh, this is about Carly or this is about Diana. Maybe she saw some girl at a coffee shop who she thought was cute one day, and she came up with a whole scenario in her mind and wrote a song about it.
That's so funny. One of my earliest TikToks, I was like, maybe False God is just about a one night stand. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
right.
And,
but like she unfortunately has like, dug her own grave to some extent in the way that she has encouraged the fans to have all this lore, and she's confirmed the lore and done all these things.
Yeah.
But it's like, and to some extent she's still doing it. Like she's still, I think she's playing a bit of a long game in that, as you say, like she is still creating narratives while also poking holes in the narrative that she's creating. But I think that like we don't hold any other like musicians to this standard where we go like every song that you write either has to be about something specific from your life and has to be like pretty close to the literal truth. I think we all understand that there's some artistic license, but like, it has to be at least like roughly what happened, or you have to make it very explicit that it's a story about teenagers or whatever. And there's no like wiggle room in between those two. But like the entire practice of songwriting lives in the wiggle room between those two for most artists. And it's weird that for Taylor Swift it doesn't. And I think she wants it to. She wants to, sort of go be in that world, but it's hard to get from here to there without pissing off her fans, without scolding her fans, without, admitting, but I think that like a lot of things she's said in some of her songs where she admits to like lying and like you should look for a different guiding light and all these things. Like I think that I've had a little bit of a hard time like fully wrapping my head until now around what I think those references were doing, but I feel like I get it now. I think this is what those references are doing. Mm-hmm. They're trying to say to the fans like what is it that people used to say about, this is a terrible comparison, I don't mean to actually compare Taylor Swift to Donald Trump, but people used to say like take Trump seriously but not literally or whatever. It's like she's like, take me seriously but not literally. Stop taking my song so literally, people.
Okay, first I want to this comment is like, people want black and white but art is a gray area. Like that's such a good comment. Like I love that. Also Tiffany said, so are we saying this album is not authentic? And I think that's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be about like what we assume it to be about, and not like the metaphors. Like I feel like so much just in life lately, especially, like people have just lost the idea of what metaphors are. And like when this is a perfect example, like I've been really frustrated with like since the Diddy stuff came out, like with the conspiracy theories of when an artist says, I made a deal with the devil.
Right.
Okay. Not the actual like demon
Right.
who comes to your house and has a piece of paper and you make a Faustian, like,
Right.
like the
Right.
devil being, you know, the industry or the sacrifices, you know, whatever. Like,
Right.
the art of the metaphor is like, whew, it is like
Right.
left the building, and so many, and that's interesting to think of, like even like her using the scarf is almost like an example of a metaphor. Like, hey guys, this, you know, this, it can be a metaphor,
Right.
not necessarily a metaphor for what a lot of people
Right.
assume it is. And but that's again like not authentic, not saying she's not being authentic, but saying like not everything is literal. Like maybe
Right.
she wasn't at the actual gym having a breakdown, you know, like all these
Right.
things.
This is why I brought up Emily St. John Mandel, because, and the concept of the counter life, because I think that I think that what she makes clear in her writing is this idea that like the experiences that you have in your counter life, where those emotional experiences are authentic. That's the thing. Like, they didn't literally happen, but they are authentic. And the idea that authenticity in art has to be tied to literal lived truth is bizarre. Like, it's not, again, as I said, it's not a standard we hold anyone else to. So I'm not insulting Taylor Swift or her music by saying, by talking about the sense of authenticity. It's just that what she has done, she or her handlers or some combination thereof chose to do from an early part of her career, was to specifically base her appeal to like her female fan, to a large extent, like, you know, female fans her own age, right? Like that was sort of where they were kind of going for, audience wise, was to be like, I will relate to you guys by telling you real stories from my life that are real and authentic and actually happened to me. Whether or not that was actually true, that was the marketing strategy.
Well, and it just works so well with the first couple of singles,
Right.
that it's like, okay, I'm gonna
just keep doing it then,
I'm gonna
right?
run with this, you know. Yeah.
But it's like, but that was just a marketing choice. That was a framing choice. It was how they framed it. But like, there's nothing wrong at all with, or nor unusual at all about not framing it that way. Almost no one frames their art that way. Almost no one has their entire discography that they say like, this is my life story. Like, you know, artists will have a few. So like Brandy Carlisle at her concert sang this one song that is about like this kid who died by suicide, and like her reaction to that, and it was very personal and very you know, like gut wrenching. And all artists have some songs like that where they're like, this is about this specific thing, right? But like, you don't usually have all of your songs be supposedly like that the way that Taylor does. And so it's like that. There's
Even
nothing
ones that I feel like
about
kind of obviously are still like, oh no, that's about like,
right. Well, that's even with this album. It's like, and I've only, some of these songs I've only listened to once or at most twice, but like, you know, there's a bunch of songs people are saying about Maddie Healy, but I think that if you were to analyze line by line, it's like, how are these all, like, the reason why we think they're about Maddie is because, well, they can't be about Joe, they can't be about Travis, and so we're just like, by default, they sound like it could be about a Maddie-like figure, but it's like, does that mean that these events happen with Maddie Healy, or are we just saying that, or are the Straightlers just saying that because, like, he's the nearest obvious target, so we'll just assume that it's about him? It's
and like I've seen people say, oh well, he's the only one of her exes that smoke. Well,
right,
that you
know
of. Like,
you can never write a song about someone else who smokes, like
right.
Like, right, not all of her songs have to be about her literal exes, even if she's singing in the first person about an ex. It still doesn't have to be about, like, she also, to your point about her earlier songs when she was like younger and stuff, like, she also never like barged into anyone's wedding and spoke now, as far as I'm aware, right? Like, these are metaphors, they're stories, they can be based on something that happened to her friend, something that happened to something she read on the internet, right? Like,
and it's poetry. Poetry is so like abstract and subjective, and like it's, you know, like a situation that's written one way that completely like represents something else, you know.
I hadn't thought about this, but that's actually a really good point in terms of the fact that this album is called what it is.
Yes. Yeah, it's like this is not a.
It's like, hey guys, this is poetry.
Yes.
I'm a poet writing poetry.
This is not an autobiography.
Right.
This is
right.
poetry.
I hadn't thought about that because there's something about it that at a certain level seems a little bit pretentious. Like, it's poetry, but it's like, I don't think that's what she's going for. I don't think she's saying like, this is high art. I think what she's going for is just be like, this is art. This is poetry. It's potentially somewhat fictional.
It's
right. Like
an amalgamation of my feelings and yes, exactly. It doesn't have to represent like an event that, occurred exactly at, that's not how poetry works.
Right.
But before I lose this thought, I think that's also in the album itself, considering there's a 2 AM version, the extended version, it's almost like in this album herself, she builds it up to break it down. Because in the first part, it feels like the most easily DNA testable album she's ever done. It's just like, this feels so obvious. Right. And then in the second one, she kind of breaks all that, like it's different, like it's not DNA testable. It also kind of like throws, oh well, we think like, oh, this entire album is about Maddie, and then the second one, it's like, maybe not, maybe like there's all this other stuff going on, and maybe all these other people that she had feelings for, and and so it's like literally like, because it feels like a very like hetero album, and then like more of a set, and it's really kind of like, okay, I'm gonna break or build up this narrative like stronger than I ever have, and then I'm going to show you like how you can break that down, and how you can take like maybe these same scenarios that I'm singing about can be the exact same scenario but framed in completely different ways, and you guys won't know the difference. Like, that's art, and maybe it's representing a shift from like, this is her last like DNA testable like album, shifting into more abstract, know? Like I feel like that that represents like that shift that we're gonna see in the future. And I feel like But Daddy I Love Him is a good example, and I want to like give credit to my child. The 16-year-old who I was just talking to you about the credit card is the one who sort of planted the seed of this whole thought process in my head. And it was, I think, during or right after that song, because we were all, me and my 3 daughters, we were all like sitting around having a listening party last night, and also with a camera pointed on us for Invisible Themes Zoom, Gaylor Zoom. Oh, so we have the Zoom up on the screen. But anyway, but Jess and during Daddy I Love Him was like, I feel like she's kind of writing stories again, like in folklore. This feels like a story that she's telling, and it's like not, and I get, are people saying that's a Maddie song? Is that the like common reading? But Daddy I Love Him, is that supposed to be a Maddie? Yeah, people think that is about her being super pissed that her fans made her break up with Maddie. Right. And so I'm like, because on the surface it feels like that. Right. But once you look at the lyrics and read it through a few times, that's not the case. Well, and I also think like it's also a great example of how just like, I feel like her poetry is so much more interesting to actually like listen to and read, as So Taylorford would say, read the text of the story that she's telling, rather than always focusing on the who it's about stuff, because it's like, I get where that notion that it's about Maddie is coming from, but it's like if it is about him, it's only very loosely, right? Like the actual story that's being told is like, it sounds like something out of a I don't even know, like a novel or something. Like there's like it's obviously not, it's very non-literal, right? Well, and it's like a love story, it's a love story. Like I keep going back to that song is so important to her. Romeo and Juliet, it's a story. It's not, it's poetry. Like, and it's like maybe she had a moment, okay, who knows, right? Like, was the Maddie thing even real? Was it PR? But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say she really was like in love with Maddie Healy for 5 minutes, and at some point during those 5 minutes, she had this passing thought where she was like, God damn it, I wish I could, actually be with him, but like, people think that he's problematic, and it's going to hurt my career, so I can't. So she had that passing thought, right? And then she wrote this entire
freaking song based on that thought. That doesn't make the song about Maddie. That makes the song about a feeling that she had that might have been partially inspired by Maddie, but it's not about Maddie. And I feel like that's the distinction that like she is like maybe wanting people to make, and what I would like to make is just that.
Sorry to interrupt your TikTok.
Yeah,
Do you know if King Supers is still open?
Do I know if King Supers? I do not know. I think so. I'm pretty sure they are. They're not. They don't close at like 8:30.
They don't close until I think 10 or 11.
Yeah. They're definitely. The teenagers have dissented.
Most people can't see this and it's so wild. Yes, I agree. I think that's so interesting because, like, to think it's not about Maddie, it's about the feeling. Like, that makes so much sense because it's not just about. It's really not about, like you said, it's about the feelings, like the bitterness, the anger, the fuck you of it all. Like, yeah, it isn't about Maddie. It's about her reaction to other people's reactions to the situation.
Right.
Or like how she feels. Like my favorite line in that whole thing is like whatever she says about like, it's my good name and I'm the one who gets to decide.
Right.
Like, and that's about more than just like, oh, if you, like fans saying if you, like that's about her image. Like that's about like her record label, whoever, her PR, like trying to protect Taylor Swift and how she feels about like, you know what? I don't fucking care. Like this is my name. I'll decide if it's important to protect my good name or not. I'm the one who built this name. This is my name. It's good because I made it good. So how she feels about other people trying to control that, control her reputation.
Right.
All of that. That's so good. Like thinking about like that and that's such a good way to frame that. It was like she wants us to think about those emotions that are evoked in that versus like, oh, I'm mad that you made me break up with Maddie. Like let's think about the implications of her feelings about all of like being controlled and perceive all of that stuff. And then think about how in your own life you can feel that way, you know, how like
which tying it back to like the Folklore Evermore thing, it's like that's not actually different from what she did in Folklore and Evermore. She just framed it differently in Folklore and Evermore. She framed it explicitly as what I just said, which is I had a feeling and I wrote songs that were premised on my feelings. But like that isn't actually different than like the Maddie Healy song or the you know what, the Travis or whatever, right? Where it's like you have a feeling and then you write a scenario in a song. As somebody commented on my side, songs aren't about events, they're about emotions. You know, like some songs are about events, some songs are specifically about events, but a lot of songs are about emotions and like you're drawing off of things in real life and then building from there. That's what the creative process is all about.
And even if they are about events, it's not like they're just like, we were at the store and then we were, you know, it's still about the emotions evoked from those events, you know, and feelings evoked from that. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. Because it's not just like, you know, the War of 1770. Like, that's not art. Like, that's history and textbook or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, I love framing it that way. Because that's just, even if every single song was about Maddie, it's not about Maddie. It's about all the things. Maybe even just it being about, like, Maddie is representative, like, you know, being drawn to that like bad guy persona. Like he doesn't give a fuck about his reputation, and he does not give a fuck about his reputation. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. Like being drawn to that, you know, that I don't give a shit. I make art for art. I say what I want. I do what I want. I don't care. You know, like that has to be alluring to somebody who is so tightly controlled and you know, controlled by the narrative and like, you know, all of that stuff. Like that's such a juxtaposition. Like that is like black and white. Like that's such a like juxtaposition of the two of them. So even if it, you know, is about like Maddie, it doesn't even have to necessarily be romantic, but like it, like drawn to what he represents, and what, you know, what those qualities that she like, just like the tattoos on the face, like those qualities that she feels like she can't embody, but she wishes she could, because they're so polar opposite of what she is able to do.
Right.
And then like how she, like the feelings all in between that, all of the grays of like, you know, but it hurts my career, but it, you know, but I want this freedom, and like, you know, letting fans down, like all of these things, and all the feelings that live in that, like you said, live in that space between.
Right.
Like that's what makes art, because anybody can just talk about a relationship, or even like how
anybody can tell
this guy made me feel this type of way. But
right,
that's
like
not what
anybody
she
can tell a
does.
story
It's
about
like,
a shitty ex. Not everybody can write all too well 10-minute version. You know, like
exactly, like
Yeah.
because anybody can say like, oh my god, this guy, and even write a moving Facebook post or whatever about like, oh, I had this abusive relationship. It's being able to describe and paint a picture of how that made her feel, how she reacted to it, how it affected her over the long term. Like, 'cause, you know, it's like when she talks so much about like seasons, and you know, again, like era, like this whole era felt red, you know what I mean? Like this, like it's not just like this event, like this whole time in my life felt very red. It felt, you know, this certain type of way. And like that's way more than just an event. That's like the things that shape you, you know, like over time, like the story of your life. Like those are the things that shape you into who you are now. You know?
Sorry, Autumn just commented on my side. Taylor Swift could write a song about Biden's left ass cheek and I'd still be moved.
I mean, and I feel like she could do that very effectively. And just like, I mean, just like, you know, Miss America and the Heartbreak Prince, if she had not specifically said, this is about politics, people would fight tooth and nail about how that is about a man. You know, like this is about a relationship, period, end of story. But because of the fact that she said, you know, this is my most political song, people have to frame it in a different way. But I've even heard people say like, yeah, she said that, but, you know, and it's like, no, like she said that for a reason. She wants to like let you know, like it can be about a love story, and it's not like at all. And yeah, and like she's writing about politics, but in such an interesting way. It's a lot more than just like a, you know, a political song about Biden's left ass cheek. It's about like how does this ass cheek affect everyone, and you know, and how I feel about it, and how it can be like framed in like that's the what makes her so good and talented. Is about her ability to make art out of something like that. Like I think that's incredible.
And the thing that's weird if you think about it, and once we sort of frame it this way, it's like going back to the example of like the Maddie Healy, some feeling she had with Maddie Healy might have inspired But Daddy I Love Him, right? Where it's like, okay, so the process is like she takes this feeling that she might have in a specific situation, and she converts that feeling and expands on it into this whole elaborate story, which she by calling it But Daddy I Love Him, like she's tying her emotion that might be about her relationship with her fans or whatever into like a broader sort of cultural narrative of like you know, a person who is in an analogous situation with their daddy, where they're trying to, you know, where and then so she does that, she turns it into this beautiful song. And then what's weird is that we as fans, partly because we've been trained to do this by her, we as fans then take that and we try to reverse engineer that process. But why? Because like the thing that the art that she produced is so much more interesting and so much better than like fucking Maddie Healy or whatever, or Carly Kloss, or like whoever, right?
And
like,
the layers of that, considering the like, But Daddy I Love Him of the Little Mermaid, you know, a lot of people thought that would be about that. Like when you peel back the layers of that being like, again, losing your voice.
Oh, there are totally little there. You can hear the ocean at the beginning of that song. There was a
and so like when you think about like losing your voice, at the same time that you're talking about how other people are the ones controlling how your good name, like there's so many layers to that. So to just be like, oh my god, she's pissed her, you know, like it's just layers on layers, and that's what, you know, I'm ADHD autistic. My special interest is music. I love music, all the genres. I've obsessed over every genre. I'm a lyrics person, and nobody since Pink Floyd has captured me the way that Taylor does. And I've been a fan since debut, but I was very much like, oh, those songs are about like whatever. And it wasn't really until really Folklore that I was like, there's so much more to this. Like we're getting, and it was because she separated herself from it. So then I was able to see like the themes and everything. And then that made me re-examine everything before it.
Right.
And that's why I think, because usually, you know, I think you've said this too, like your hyperfixations don't last this long usually, you know?
Right.
And the only one that's lasted this long for me is Pink Floyd, because there's so many layers to their lyricism, and it's just like, and so for her to continue to keep, like, I could make 50 videos a day, no kidding, and not be done with all the thoughts that I have about that, and that I'm continually discovering about her work, about all the connections she makes, like all of that stuff. And so for her to still like captivate me in a way, somebody who's examined thousands and thousands and thousands of songs, is like a testament to her art, and the people that are seeing it like I used to, you know, with just are missing so much. And I'm hoping that she's going to be able to transition, you know, like I transitioned from that to this. Some people will be able to make that jump with her. And some people won't. Some people are going to be, you know, oh no, I want this. And if you're not going to give it to me, like whatever. But hopefully some fans are going to be able to go with her, and it's going to bring back some of the like media literacy that's lost. Because a lot of that like media literacy and just analysis and stuff is just lost. You know, so hopefully like, and that's like a cultural shift too, of like being able to look at things deeper, you know, and recognize metaphors and recognize, I mean, it ties into like her even politically, like talking about how she hated so much Trump's because of all the misinformation and stuff like that, you know. And like, again, it's like teaching everybody that lesson of like, there's more to the story. There's always more to the story. Like, look deeper. Like, I don't know. It just like ties into that like cultural, because she is the cultural zeitgeist. Like, she is a huge part of that. And so using that for good and to like improve society in some way versus just like shake it off, you know what I mean? And so like, even Shake It Off, I feel like has a deeper meaning that I haven't unlocked yet because it's so important to her. Like, I feel like there's like something deep in there, but yeah, I just feel like I hope that this album is making people like examine her art, and you know, Gaylor's or not, but just so much better than, or like deeper than like seeing so many Swifties just now understand that Lover was a sad and anxious album. It's like, it's infuriating because like duh, but also like how sad for Taylor. That she has poured everything in, like, it's so clear if you look at that, like, just because it's disguised as a bop, like, even Death by a Thousand Cuts is
I was just gonna say Death by a Thousand Cuts.
Like that's a fun song. That's a devastating song. Like, that's a devastating song. And so, like, you know, not recognizing, just because it's like, boppy does not mean that, you know, and she's like the queen of that. Like, there's so many songs that she has that are like, holy shit, that's sad as fuck, you know? And so the best thing that could have ever happened to her, honestly, is the pandemic. Like, I know that she, you know, because she had to slow down, but just that shift in people like me being able to look at her art in a detached way, even like look back on Lover and be like, oh, like there's so much more to that. And then, you know, moving forward, I'm just so excited to see like where this is going.
I mean, it's one of the things that I'm gonna bring in Brandy Carlisle again because I can't help myself. Hashtag ADHD. Hashtag autism. But like you know, when I look at Brandy Carlisle's songwriting, you know, Brandy Carlisle's my age. She's 42, so she's like 8 years older than Taylor or whatever. And I can see her sort of the topics that she writes her most emotional songs about tend to be a lot more introspective. They tend to be a lot more just like they have like a depth and a maturity to them that like I love to see, and you know, we're seeing more and more of from Taylor, as you would sort of expect as she gets older too, right? And so like Folklore, Evermore, and now this, and some of the stuff from Midnights too. I don't mean to like always shit on Midnights. It's a good album. It's just, you know, different, serves a different purpose. But
I completely agree about Midnight. So,
but I think some of the 3 a.m. tracks are fit in with my analysis. Not so much the main album tracks, but like the way that I can sort of see her maturing into a place where she's able to more comfortably just sing about, and I think you see this in the second half of this album, where I was joking on the Gaylor Zoom. I was like #therapy lure. You know, it was like,
right,
this
right.
This isn't about a man and it isn't about a woman. This is about Taylor went to therapy and is healing her inner child. You know, like some of those,
like, you know, yeah, 100%.
That is the sort. You know, I hope we keep seeing more of that, because I think that is so much more interesting than like I don't know, than the type of stuff that some of the other fans like to obsess over. I don't want to, and I don't like to judge. Like, it's fine to like be a fan who appreciates the bops, like, and just. I mean, I'm someone actually. One of the things about Taylor that's unusual for me is that I am, because of my ADHD, I'm not usually very good at listening to lyrics like casually. Like, if I don't pay close attention, and in fact, I was just saying this. My terrible confession. I was saying this to one of my kids earlier. Ivy is one of my favorite songs by Taylor. It's like it's like 4th or 5th on my list. I'm not sure if I've ever actually sat down and actually listened carefully to every word of Ivy. I generally know, and I have like the bridge memorized, but it's such a bop. It's such a bop that I just end up going, and I just can't focus on it.
Right.
I fucking love that
and that's
song.
Okay, but
if you were like, Brendan, what's Ivy about? I'd be like, well, it's super gay. I know that, you know, but like.
Like, there's a freezing hand. Like, she's cold. Yeah. I don't know.
There's like some stone and shit, and then there's a goddamn fire. I know that. So like, I get it.
Goddamn fire in the spring.
So it's totally fine to like appreciate music at a more surface level. There's nothing wrong with that, because also, even if it's at a lyrically surface level, it can be a deeper musical level. Like, sometimes the songs that I love the most tends to have more to do with like, what is the background instrument, you know, than the lyrics. So that's all fine, you know, but it's just
opposite.
Like,
so I think that like both things are valid, because her production is so purposeful.
Right.
Like, just her putting her heartbeat in, her putting the clangs in closure, like every single choice has a reason. Right. Like, there's a purpose behind it. So that's also like important, you know.
Like the key change, like the one of my favorite things along these lines is so I have a theory that Betty is the spiritual successor to Love Story, in that like those two songs. I know that Betty is like not considered like the masterpiece of folklore. Like, it's not on most people's like top 5 folklore songs or whatever.
It's important to her though.
Yeah, I think that in 10 years, if you ask me, tell me one song that will from folklore that she will definitely still be playing in concert in 10 years, it's Betty. I think it's Betty.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, what we see is, that's what I've learned to like, what the songs that Taylor thinks are important are the ones that are important to this story.
Right.
And that's why I'm like, Shake It Off is very important to her. She sings that in times that it's like, but like, you know, and Love Story, very important to her. There are certain songs that mean something to this story. Like, they mean more than others.
Well, yeah, but the thing with on the musical point is just like in Love Story and Betty, one of the things that they share is that when it gets to the like sort of big moment of the song, there's a key change where the key goes up like one step. That's the part where, you know, on Marry Me Juliet, there's a key change on Marry Me Juliet, and there's a key change on, I forget what the line is, but in Betty it's like those in what's interesting about it in Betty actually is that unlike in Love Story, it explicitly tells us what happened. It tells us that she said yes, right? Mm-hmm. But like in Betty, it's like the key change is actually what tells us what happens. Like he goes to the door, and the song never really tells us did she forgive him, but the key change tells us that she forgave him.
Oh, that's so interesting.
You know, and that's like I did a whole series about that was actually tying Betty with a song by the Canadian folk singer Stan Rogers called "The Mary Ellen Carter," which is one of the best songs ever. It's a song about a boat. As another creator,
I did see your series about this. I think.
yeah. As the I love Odd Pride. She did a video about. She's a creator on here. Did a video about Mary Ellen Carter, and she called it. She's like, sometimes a love song can be about a love between a man and his boat. You know, and that's what Mary Ellen Carter is.
Right.
But like it and Betty have that sort of that little mystery at the end where they don't quite tell you what happens, but the music tells you what happens. And I think that's so interesting when when a song does that. I don't know, the whole tangent.
Well,
but.
And I think that like plays into, you know, people criticize her about not changing producers and like stuff like that. Right. But like Taylor's also a producer on her album. Like we have to like keep in mind that these choices that Jack or whoever's making, like she is also in on those choices. She's agreeing, like that's a collaborative effort. That's why the songs say like written by these two people. Like it's and you know, those they're choices, and she is so much somebody. The mashups prove that so much of like that her discography plays with each other. So like there is a invisible string from the very beginning to now. Like that string is the lyrics. That string can be things like the keychain, the production, like whatever. There are things that tie different songs to different things and that you may not even notice. The lyrics may not even say, you know. So the like we focus so much, and I'm guilty of this too because I'm a lyrics person, but like focus so much on her writing and her lyricism, but the production plays so much a part of that, like so much. Even just the heartbeat, you know, connecting, like and so
what was the song on this album that like referenced CPR, and then there was like a lyric about CPR, and then at the end there was a little bit of a heartbeat again, and I was like, ooh, I see what you're
noticed
doing.
that too. I don't know them all enough to say. But yeah, and so like things like that I feel like connect songs way more than Sunshine. You know, or whatever. Like you know, or whatever.
So long.
Like
Megan in my comments said it's So Long London. I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Like the production of those things tell a big story too. And so yeah, I think that's like just another level. And again, maybe why she's so successful, because there are lyric people and then there are music people, but both have like all these layers that you can peel back, which is not most artists don't have. Like it's kind of like one or the other, like, and there's just more and more you can find out once you strip things back. I think that's very interesting. So Long London, Vulture. Okay. I need to listen. I listened to the first album a lot, and then I've only listened to the second album like 2 or 3 times. So
you're way ahead of me. You're way ahead of me. I listened to, of course, the whole thing last night, and then I kept like being sidetracked by other things, and so I finally, like this afternoon, sat down and started my second listen, but I didn't get all the way through it. You know, so there's still some songs that I've only heard once.
No. I stayed up way too late, and I was actually planning to make a couple videos before I went to sleep, and was like reactions and stuff, but I had my headphones on and I just like kept listening, and I just like kept listening, and then was like, I have to go to sleep. And so I finally just like went to bed listening to it. But so I listened to the first one. I've listened to it the whole thing probably 3 times, but the first one a bunch of times. So
I love all of the like bonus, what were the originally announced bonus tracks, like the Manuscript and the Black Dog and the
Albatross.
The Albatross, like particularly like Black Dog. And I love the Manuscript. I think the Manuscript is so pretty. Like it's just so beautiful.
I can't wait to break that one.
The very like opening notes of that song, I don't know if anyone else has like thought this, and this is like a very nerdy connection to make, but the very opening notes of that song remind me of Rey's theme from The Force Awakens, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Like whenever I hear the beginning of that song, I think of like the movie trailer that started with those notes for Star Wars. But it's just such a freaking pretty song, and so like haunting. I don't know. I just think like there's a lot of, I don't know yet what my favorites are going to be, but like there's a couple like that one where I'm like, I could see this being a sort of a new Champagne Problems in the sense of like a song that I could just listen to an infinite number of times. Like, because with Champagne Problems, I really put that to the test over the summer because I was listening to every single performance of it on the Eras tour in order to time the standing ovation. So I listened,
Yes.
I listened to that song like, 80 times on whatever, and I never get sick of it. It's it's such a beautiful song, and I feel like this album has some of those.
I feel like that with Who's Afraid of Little Old Me.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow, that's my favorite so far. I'm so obsessed with that song. I definitely have heard that one like 15 times. Like I listened to that one a bunch of times. I love it so much. But I also think that one is like such, like so rooted in the fame and the industry and all that stuff, which like I'm all about.
That's like your thing. Yeah.
That's my shit. So like I love that one. I can't wait to like really get into like the lyrics of it all, because I just like what I was hearing, but like really break it down. Somebody said that Peter starts out with the same keys as Champagne Problems.
Ah, okay.
That's interesting.
I hadn't noticed that, but I'll have to listen for it.
And then this person said the ear monitor count is in the very background of I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, like what you hear when she's on the Eras tour. That's very interesting.
That's cool.
Because the Spotify canvas is her Eras tour.
Right.
And then I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. So with the ear monitor being in the like that. Right. See, that's the kind of shit that like, I love that shit.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so cool. Until a week ago, I was like pretty certain that my top song of the year on Spotify was going to be Olivia Rodrigo's "So American" because I just that song came out like less than a month ago, and it's far and away my top song of the year as of right now, according to Stats.fm, because it's such a bop and it's only 3 minutes long, and I just listen to it on repeat. Right. But now between like some of these songs on this album that I think are going to be on repeat for me, and also I've just discovered Chapel Roan, and so now I like Pink Pony Club and like a bunch of her songs are on repeat. I don't know what it's going to be, but
I'm obsessed with Cowboy Carter, and then we're getting Billy in a month, and like I've been a Billy stan since her first since Ocean Eyes followed her career, so like the fact that we got Cowboy Carter, and I've never been a huge Beyonce fan, like I've followed her and stuff, but it's not like one of my top artists. Obsessed with all of the layering and the history and stuff in Cowboy Carter. Right. And then this huge album from Taylor. And then we're going to get Billy. And, I'm still on my guts shit too. So
Right.
So much music.
The songs that she held back and on Guts Filled, Scared of My Guitar and Stranger and So American, like those songs, those are like maybe my 3 favorite songs on the album. They're all so good. I don't know, what was the Taylor song that there was a Stranger, I forget now. There was some Taylor song that Stranger reminded me of, and I'm drawing a blank, but I don't know. I feel like
so much in my head right now. I can't even articulate all the shit. So much music this year.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Well, I should probably go because I think the teenagers are going to be back over soon, and then it'll get really noisy.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you hopped on. You had such good thoughts. I am going to save this live and clip it and stuff, so I'll tag you or let you know or whatever. Okay, but cool. I think we had some good thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you for hopping on with me.
Thank you for letting me hop on because I feel like now I can let my brain rest a little bit instead of otherwise I was gonna have to immediately go and film 5-10 minute videos because I have all these thoughts that I need to get out.
That's exactly. I was like, no, I'm just gonna go live with this music video because otherwise I'm just gonna be like last night on Twitter I was slightly manic, oh my god, processing all things. So this is a good way to talk about, and I just think you had really good insight. So a lot more to think about, but now I feel like I can process the music more than just all of the meta stuff behind it.
Yeah. Okay,
totally. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, have a good night.
Yes, I'm gonna stay on for a little bit. I'm gonna talk about, we're gonna look at the a little bit. Okay, yes, I am definitely gonna clip it. I've never done that, but I know that they have the ability to do that, and if it's too long I'll put it on YouTube or something, because I think we had some really good thoughts. I love processing out loud, because it's funny because my partner, he doesn't care or know anything about Taylor, but sometimes I'll just like, you know, info dump, and then I'm like, oh my god, I wish I was recording that. Like those were all of my best thoughts, and now like once it's out, I can't hardly even remember what I was saying. So